Hello, my name is Jeff Phillips, Senior Audio, Video, and Lighting Designer for Sound Marketing. Today, I would like to show you a device that I found that can give you easy, intuitive control over system power, on-off, lectern mute. It can do preset recalls, and it can be a push-to-talk button. The device is called the RDL AMS TS1. RDL, of course, stands for Radio Design Labs. It can be used as you see here, or it can be mounted into a DB-D1 single-gang Decora-sized mounting plate, which is how I have mine. Now, here's how this works. You touch once, the button turns green. You touch again, and the button turns red. Touch again, and it turns green. Touch again, and it turns red, etc. So here's what it looks like on the back panel, and you need to supply 24 volts DC to it. It takes about less than 100 milliamps. I used the PS24AS power supply from RDL, but you could just as easily use something cooler like the Lowell DCP 1224. It's available from Lowell Manufacturing. Now, it's important that you set some toggle switches on this device depending on how you want to use it. If you want to wire for direct control with no feedback, if you don't care about feedback, you just want to push a mute to the DSP device, then set this switch to toggle, set this switch to internal. Now, my preferred DSP brand is BSS, and I want to show you the control ports here, and it shows you that you just have to ground it, hook the output control to logic pin number 1, and away you go. In the example I'm going to show you, I am just simply controlling a mute, and so what you need to do on the BSS side is hold control and click and drag that mute onto logic pin 1 in your control ports programming. Now, when you touch it, the button will turn green, the mute will be unmuted. Touch again, it'll turn red, the mute will be activated. Very simple, but there's a potential problem with this, and that's what if you have more than one point of control? Let's say you have an AMX control system that is also controlling this particular mute function, or you've got a BSS Ethernet controller, wall controller that's out there somewhere also managing this mute, or maybe there's even a PC control panel with this mute. We have two problems with this that can happen. One is one control can lock out the rest, and it locks it into that state that the first controller is issuing. The other problem is one of synchronization, where you've muted it here, you've unmuted it there, and something shows the wrong status, and neither is a situation we want. So I came up with a different way, a wiring for exclusive control feedback is what I'm going to show you next. We have to set the switches a little bit differently. First, we're going to set the mode to pulse on the RDL AMS TS1. That's going to give us a 125 millisecond pulse from that switch. It's not going to stay on. It's going to just give a logic pulse out and then turn itself back off. And we also need to set the LEDs so they get their data or get their status from an external source, which of course will be the BSS DSP. And here's how you wire it. Just about the same, and we just simply added two wires that grab the logic outputs 1 and 2 from the BSS and route them directly to the LED output control ins. Now, you're going to need to do some work on the BSS side of things. The first thing you want to do is to create this logic circuit right here, logic source, a counter shifter, and a logic trigger. And you're going to want to set the logic source's properties so that the auto off is engaged. In other words, you put a value in there. If you put 0 in that, it's never going to be auto off. It's going to be latching on and off. But if you put an auto off of 1, then it's going to turn off after 100 milliseconds, which is pretty consistent with the way the switch works. Next thing you want to do is to hold Control and click and drag the logic button onto the logic input number 1. And you're also going to want to drag the mute that we're controlling onto output pins, in this case 1 and 2 of the logic outputs. Now note over here that I've set 1 to be normal and 1 to be inverted, and that's going to say that we're driving the LED that's red separately from the LED that is green, and never the two should be on at the same time. So the 1 mute is the source for both logic outputs, but 1 is inverted, 1 is not. It's always one or the other. Next, we go back to make some parameter presets. So we hold Control and click and drag the mute onto the parameter preset working space, and then we create a preset that says mute and a preset that says unmute. Next, we have to call those presets when the preset trigger is triggered. And what we want to do is set the low state to call the unmute preset and the high state to call the mute preset. All right, so now we're all set. And here's what's going to happen. The logic sequence is going to be the remote button is pressed, triggering the mute preset. Immediately after 125 milliseconds, the source pulse will end, but notice that the preset remains latched on in the muted state. Next, the remote button is pushed again, and it's going to trigger the unmute preset, and then the source pulse ends, and we're back to where we started from. Now, the beauty of this scheme is that all devices control this mute function, and they won't have to be worried about being locked out of the control, and we will get clear and accurate feedback on all controlling devices, including this button. So there you go, an illuminated touch-activated button for remote DSP control. For more information, you can see rdlnet.com, lowellmanufacturing.com, bssaudio.com, and of course our website, soundmarketingreps.com. Thank you. We'll see you next time.